Hello and welcome to this month's edition and community meeting for My Period Data is Mine. You have Marcel
Hiya.
and you have me, Daniela. Hello. Um, and we will give you a quick update on what has happened to our product, to our period tracker, and also again why we are doing it and why now is the right time to look after your data as it is. So I'm going to start first before Marcel because I think I have not the more important updates, but uh, the biggest and best news that there are, and that is that it appears, it doesn't only appear, but actually in the UK, the NHS, the National Health Service, is trying to have a push to educate everyone about periods. And they're starting with trying to put information about menstruation into boys' toilets.
Yeah.
So when I grew up, there was pretty much nothing out there. I was lucky that I was in one of those schools. We actually had really, really good sex education, which I think was brilliant. The funny thing was, our biology teacher in that year was painfully shy, and he actually had to get changed for somebody more experienced in that field. And I was really lucky to end up with a lovely, lovely teacher who already had a child herself as well, and who had the best way of talking about sex with teenagers, young teenagers at that, that made it approachable and accessible. And when I say sex, I just want to be very, very clear here. It's not only the animalistic "let's have a go," but there's a lot more to it. There is the, first of all, menstruation. Because if people didn't have ovaries, uteruses, and vaginas, there wouldn't be any babies in this world. Not ever. Still is needed. Still 100% you need ovaries and a uterus to have a baby. That's the way it is. But that means that people need to know about it. People need to know, well, how do things happen? How does a baby come about? When I was a very young child, there was the story of a stork brings the babies in springtime. I know other stories, such as they grow in the cabbage field and they need to be harvested. There are many, many different myths out there that very young children are being told on how babies come about. But reality is, it requires ovaries and a uterus, and it requires the menstrual cycle. Without that, nothing is going to happen. And that sets women slightly apart from men in the way the body works. Women have a more or less monthly cycle, whereas men, well, they just pump out the sperm. And I don't want to be disrespectful here, but that's the difference in the systems. One is a cyclical one, and the other one is just, yeah, all the time at the ready. And
So,
sorry?
did you learn about your menstrual cycle at school before your menstruations started?
Technically, yes. We were told about cycles in general in a more abstract sort of a way. We did learn in biology at a very young age how grain germinates, how animals procreate, and things like that. So it's more the abstract level. But in terms of how it relates to myself or humans, um, the main part was done during sex ed. And again, I was lucky. Sex ed was not just one class or a month or a semester. It was 1 hour a week for the whole year. And now I don't think it's too much, and anyone out there think, oh, preposterous, too much time, too much time. There are a lot of questions that people have. And first of all, to establish the trust that whilst the person is a teacher, and you may have had her in different classes, but to establish a trust that yes, you can ask whatever question you want to ask, and no, nobody will be laughing at it, and nobody was laughing in class, and all of the questions were taken seriously and dealt with seriously, including the period questions. And yes, I was lucky, as I mentioned, my teacher in particular. she was a woman. She could talk about it from her perspective, her own personal experience, which I think has helped. Um, and it kind of brought it home a little bit. But for me personally, I had my period before the talk. Um, and it's just what happens. The age of menage being the first time a young woman has a period, has been lowering steadily over the last 50, 100 years. Definitely the last 50 years, because we've got records on that. So, whereas 50 years ago, it would be more around the age of 16, 15, 16 ish. Nowadays, it's more common that young women have the first period age 12, 11, somewhere around there. There is one reported case of a girl under age of 10 giving birth. That means her cycle must have happened at some point. She may not have had the first menarche bleeding, but she must have been able to or her body must have had an egg in her uterus that was fertilized. Um, very tragic case, really. You can read up online. But menage, as I said, the first time you have a period is reducing. I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not qualified to say whether an 11-year-old child should know the ins and outs of physical sex and the intimate, not intimate. It does not need to be intimate. I don't think that rape ever can be considered intimate in any which way. But the physical side of sex, I'm not sure 11 is the age. I'm not qualified. If you are qualified or if you have an opinion, do write in, do join us on a call and tell us what's the right age to have the talk, so to speak. I think that 13, 14, when I was in that class, is a good age because it's the time in one's life where people get curious, they're trying things out, and it's definitely the time where you want to be shown how to put the condom on and also be given some condoms just in case, to work out and try out your technique at home if you like, or use them, whichever. But I think it's the right age, possibly a bit sooner. Um, But as I said, I was lucky with that, and that's why I'm so happy to hear that the NHS is trying to do their bit and trying to not only make sure that young women, when I say young women, most people would call them girls. They're still um, very young. The bodies often have not developed um, to have a pregnancy and go through with the pregnancy without any damage. And that is something else that a lot of people are unaware of. That just because you have a period does not mean that your body is fully developed enough to then give birth, a live birth, without complications. It's just a hard thing. Being pregnant and having a baby and giving birth is just so hard on the body. People don't understand the ins and outs and how often it actually goes wrong. And again, one of the things that we learned in that 1 year of sex ed is that we had a conversation with a gynecologist, basically specializing on delivering babies. And that doctor, first of all, really nice man, very knowledgeable, very experienced, but he also did tell us that it's not easy. It's not like what you see in the movies that, oh, it's 5 minutes and it's over. No, there was one case. I remember when I was a little older, one of my neighbors, she was in labor for 3 days. Now imagine 3 days, and it's a long time. Most people wouldn't eat during that time. A lot of people don't even drink during that time. There's a lot of preparation that goes into having a birth, and a lot of things happen. Sometimes quickly, sometimes it takes a long time. But it's never an easy thing. I would not recommend it personally because it's really hard on the body, especially at a young age. And I do think people need to know about it. So I'm ranting, so I'm talking a lot about it because it's really important to me.
Yeah, I think it's worth separating out the different aspects to the educational requirements because there is the menstrual cycle, which will happen at a very early age for some young women. But then there's the sex and the pregnancy and giving birth, and those conversations, the last three, can always happen at a later date. There's always going to be a need to talk to a young woman about their menstrual cycle before they have their first menstruation. And I think my period data of mine is about tracking your menstrual cycle and having that information available and understanding why that information has been recorded, etc., is going to be more important to have at an early age than perhaps the other ones. I'm not saying don't have the other ones.
Mhm.
I'm just saying if you're going to have a discussion, you need to have this discussion first.
Mhm.
With young women, they need to know about this first, even if you think that they don't need to know about sex and pregnancy
Mhm.
and labor and things like that, which can come later. I think the information needs to come out early. And that's why I asked the question, did you have this education at school before your first menstrual cycle? Because I think most young women, and I don't speak from experience at all, obviously, most young women are having their menstrual cycle before they have a chance to speak to anyone about it.
Yes.
So that education needs to happen, even if you don't want to have the discussion about sex at that point.
Yes. Yes. I completely agree. And again, going back to the starting point, that's why it's important that not only girls but boys as well, that everyone knows and understands what's happening.
Yes,
Um,
just so that it's not this taboo subject, which you see to this day. I mean, we were watching that one TV series, uh, what small achievable goals,
yes.
about two women, approaching their menopause, and the one woman's having irregular periods, and it's still a taboo subject. She can't talk about it. She has to hide it, and I think that's why it needs to be discussed, not just with the young woman, but with everyone, so everyone understands what's happening. So when something happens, it's not like, oh my God, why is she bleeding?
Yes. And and one is there are lots of thoughts to this topic, and and the topic of menstruation, how it relates to our app and why it's important, is that it's really important to know when your period is doing something different than the norm. If you have a period, you're a young woman, in your 20s and 30s, your period should be regular enough. You may be stressed and it's a day later too, or yeah, a week later too, fine. But generally, in a healthy person, your period would be regular enough. So
Yeah,
it's important to know when things are not regular, when things go off the rails a little bit. Well, when things change before they go off the rails. Once they're off the rails, it's high time to get medical help. But it's the watching what is normal, finding out what is normal. And from my own personal experience, growing up without those trackers, it's really hard to remember when exactly did it happen last time. What exactly did I do? Was I under stress? Or was I having a great time and my period was still late? Things like that. It's really, really easy to forget. And that's why writing it down is important. And one thing why privacy is important and why everyone should be taught privacy at the same time is because you don't necessarily want to share the data with people unless you trust them. So I wouldn't want to share the data with most people out there. I would want to share them with certain medical professionals. Not everyone. Not everyone needs to know. My normal standard general practitioner or family doctor, depending on where you are, does not need to know when my period happens. It's just not important for standard things. It is important when I go to a gynecologist, for example, though. So it really depends on who needs to know, who am I going to share with. And I wouldn't need to know anyone in my personal life to know about it because it's none of their business really. Let's be very, very honest.
yeah,
But at the same time, I'm one of those people. I don't hold back telling people about endometriosis or things like that because it is important to hear other people talk about it. Not, I know I'm sometimes ranty, but not in a ranty way, just in a matter of fact way. That things like that are out there, that things like that need to be talked about, and I don't think it's shameful. I don't think that having my period is shameful. I mean, what the fuck? And I'm not apologizing for swearing, but what the fuck? Why does anybody want to tell me that me existing in this world is shameful? It is not. I'm a human being. I've got human rights. I have every right to be here, and I have every right to ask for medical help when I need it, and to ask for privacy when I want it. And there's that. That's why we have our project and our tracker, because
Exactly.
privacy is important, and making sure that um, people have the data they need for when they need it.
Yeah.
And yeah, no shame. Do go and watch Small Achievable Goals if you can
Yes.
get your hands on it. I personally would highly recommend it, especially for women like myself at that age. It's funny because it's true.
Yeah. It's that sad truth,
Unfortunately, it's sad, but
but at
again,
least
that's
they're talking about it.
sorry.
But they're talking about it. They're highlighting it, and why it's funny is because it's still deemed a taboo subject.
Yes, people should be ashamed of it. That's the underlying emotion that women are being talked into, which
Yeah.
I'm riling against on the inside and outside sometimes. Um, and we need to change that. Again, that's why our project is here. And if you look on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, any of those platforms to fund projects, generally period trackers are not funded because it's a taboo subject. People don't talk about it. People don't want to be associated with it. People don't even want to be seen anywhere near it.
Mm.
And it's such a shame. It really, really is. Just imagine how much better women's lives would be if only they got the medical help they needed. And I'm not talking about anything that's out of the ordinary. Um, Again, going back to my experience, endometriosis, it takes on average 8 years, 8 painful years before they get diagnosed correctly.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here, trying to make a little bit of a difference. If you want to help, you can donate to us, or you can donate your time and help us getting the word out, or with programming, or with the security aspect, or the user design really is where we need a lot more help as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Data that needs to be collected.
Yes, and that's why another bit of good news since last time is that I have started emailing gynecologists. And not just random gynecologists, but actually trying to find those people who have expertise in the area of menstruation in particular, and what information needs to be gathered. So researchers in that area rather than and again, I don't mean to disrespect anyone here, but rather than the run-of-the-mill gynecologist. So people who research what is important, what is not needed, what early signs of changes would be important to see and know, rather than just anything out there. Because a lot of the period trackers that I've come across, they are collecting data left, right, and center, and that data is not necessarily needed at all. So
Exactly.
So we're trying to be very specific, and in our app, as I mentioned, join us. Join us on our call if you disagree with any of my ranty little speeches, or if you have actual information on topics. Join us in getting the product out, or donate to us so that we can get it out quicker and sooner.
Yep.
What else? Last thing before I hand over to Marcel. What I see as good news, and what is being presented as good news in the UK, that the National Health Service is trying to educate everyone, including boys, equally on menstruation. I've seen the same headline on Fox News as a negative, that it would be ridiculous to tell boys what menstruation is all about. So, again, don't let the haters derail you. Make sure that you ask for what you need for your life to be healthy, and keep the data that you have, your own data, keep it private as much as you want. If you want to share it, do it. If you don't want to share it, then get off the period trackers that collect your data that they don't need to, and share it with other third parties that you may not know. Enough for me, Marcel.
My main update is the version that you have on your phone that you've
Mhm.
been testing is now part of the main uh, development branch on GitHub. So if anyone, as we've said before, if anyone wants to have access to that first proof of minimum viable product, I think we're calling it, to show that how the app works, how to collect data, how to you can view the data, etc., is now available on GitHub. So either have a talk to us and we can help you get it onto your phone, or if you're technically competent, you can go onto GitHub and compile the app for yourself and install it on the phone yourself. So that's now available. Which also means, of course, that I'm now working on the first version, which will incorporate all the feedback that I've got from Daniela as to what she wants to see in the app before we make the first version available on the Google Play Store. And we'll also be making it available on F-Droid for those people who don't want to have any access to Google whatsoever. They just want to be able to download the app and install it on the phone. So we'll make it available in those two stores initially. But if anybody thinks we should make it available elsewhere, please have a chat to us with us and let us know.
Yes, it's
So quite a big update, but yeah, not much to say about it other than it's done.
it is a big update, and even the neighbor's dog seems to be excited about it. Sorry about the background noise, everyone. It is a big update, and it is a big change. So that means that before long, you can have the tracker as well. We will be improving it as we go along. It is not going to
Yes,
be the final version. Um, when I say we will be improving it as we go along, it does not mean that we're going to be able to access your data. Your data will always be with you. We don't have it. Frankly, I don't want it. Um, it's for you to have and for you to use any which way you want.
exactly.
Yes. Um, and with that, that's everything from me at the moment.
Yeah, the same for me.
And with that, as mentioned, if you want to join us, if you want to help us, you're more than welcome. If you want to join our call next time, please do so. I will put the date out on the website and Mastodon, YouTube, and everywhere else. And with that, I say bye bye. Have a good week and a good Easter weekend as well. Bye bye.
Bye.